Dr. Alan Mendoza is Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've already spoken to Ian Duncan Smith a little bit earlier. He, of course, one of the Tory and other MPs sanctioned by China for speaking out against their handling of the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. Of course, we had the Vice President of China being sent by Xi Jinping to represent the Chinese nation at the coronation. Big row about that because he was the man who was basically leading that crackdown on pro-democracy campaigners. And we've got Trade Minister Lord Johnson. No, different one, Lord Dominic Johnson. He's leading this trade mission with sort of fintech and financial services to try and really boost our business ties with Hong Kong. Should we be boosting our ties with Hong Kong now that, it is under Chinese rule? Should we be maintaining this sort of nicey-nicey relationship with China, given how they behave in the rest of the world and indeed at home?
Well, it seems that the Hong Kong element in particular is a rather ludicrous thing for the trade minister to have gone to. I mean, China has broken its treaty with the UK on Hong Kong. It's, of course, crushed liberty in Hong Kong. We've extended the opportunity for many Hong Kongers to come to the UK as a result of what China has done. And for us to go and say essentially, oh, don't worry, it's all okay, we want to trade with you, sends precisely the wrong message to Beijing. It basically says to President Xi, do what you want. The UK will always want to deal with you.
I mean, the thing is, that is the reality. We're sending that message because that is how our government actually feels. We get a load of cheap goods. I mean, China is absolutely vital for the supply of many of the products that we buy in this country. It's hard to find anything that doesn't say made in China, isn't it? And that's always, I think, what bears remembering when we look at the threat to Taiwan. Not a veiled threat, a clear, open threat. We'll take Taiwan back either peacefully or militarily within just a few years. This is from leading figures in the Chinese government, and the concern that there will be some sort of invasion, some sort of attempt to take that country which they don't recognise as a separate country back, and what the West will do, because if we're still, want a better phrase, kowtowing to China because of our economic and trading ties, then we're not really going to take action, given how much the economic sanctions on Russia have hurt us. I mean, look at our energy bills, look at the state of our economies right now. Given that, realistically, what are we going to do if China does invade Taiwan?
Well, I think you can divide that into two different sort of categories in terms of the economics and in terms of the trade. I think, look, what we've been arguing and what people like Ian Duncan Smith and others in Labour, the Conservatives, Lib Dems across the board actually been arguing is a strategic, if you like, disentangling from China, i.e. in those areas where if the Chinese were to stick their sort of foot on our neck in the event of a crisis and could threaten to choke us, we should be able to say, well, go right ahead, because it's not going to affect any of our critical national
nuclear reactors, 5G network and things like that.
Even things like medicines, by the way, all that, and rare earths, we've got to find, we need to diversify now. And so it's a very strange thing to be sort of going to China and saying, look, let's do more trade with you, when we haven't sorted out at this end what we want to disentangle from China. If you do that, you end up, running the risk. I'll have a monopoly in areas like the Russians did on oil and gas, and that will cause a massive problem. Here we have a warning, we're not listening.
Indeed. Can I ask you actually about Russia? We've had some extraordinary statements from Vladimir Putin this morning in Red Square. This is the Victory Day. Every year they mark the victory over the Nazis in the Second World War. Rather sort of downgraded celebrations, commemorations today, partly also because they don't have the military equipment and the men, they're off in Ukraine, but also because they didn't want the families of those who've lost loved ones in wartime to be paraded, because that would show exactly how many casualties they've lost in Ukraine. But he said this morning that Ukrainian people are hostages to the West. The West is creating a cult of Nazism, and Ukraine has waged war against Russia, and a real war has been unleashed against Russia. And again, this is by the West. Extraordinary sort of victimhood here from Vladimir Putin. A lot of lies, but the question is, how many of his Russian people, only able to see state-controlled propaganda, will believe those lies?
Well, I think that's what he's trying to do, obviously. I mean, he's basically inverted the situation, as we know. He's the one who's tried to, create fascist authoritarianism. He's the one who's invaded his neighbours. It's all gone very badly wrong, and he needs to create a narrative, doesn't he, that tells his people that they're the victims and he's defending them. I mean, in a sense, Julia, it's ironic we talk about, obviously, Victory Day. Let's not forget that the invasion of the Soviet Union occurred after Stalin and Hitler had done a dirty deal, originally. And so it is, kind of ironic that, then, as in now, essentially, you've got this problem for for Russia. They've got to recreate a narrative where they were, sort of bought into one side of the debate and then had to create another one to react against it. He's trying to invoke history. He likes the idea of history, Russian history, Soviet history, to try and, rally the people. Now, whether they're going to listen or not as the body bags, come in, that's another question. And I think there is some concern, as you pointed out, judging by the limited nature of these ceremonies today, that actually the war isn't going well, and that if it continues in this way, more sort of PR damage will occur to him.
Yeah, indeed. We shall wait and see how it all plays out. Always so good to talk to you. Get your thoughts, Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society.